Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the Designated Safeguarding Leads network meeting. I've got a few people arriving now. As soon as you start talking, it always happens, doesn't it? So just a couple of minor points for today. Just be aware of the environmental noise that you might have and make sure that your microphone's on mute. This session is being recorded, so while we'll cut down the video so it is just the presentation, if you can switch off your camera if you're not needing to use it, that would be good. And if you've got any questions, please ask them in the chat as well. That would be fantastic. As this session is being recorded, all of the masterclasses, all of the meetings that we do like this, we put online onto our YouTube channel. It's also going to be linked onto our Learning for Professionals page, so you can access this later on, and people who didn't get the opportunity to attend will also be able to access it. You can subscribe to our channel. With matter of fact, we would really encourage you to do so, because doing so, once we hit a certain threshold, we can then name the channel rather than having that tremendously long and horrible name that is on the end of youtube.com/channel/, which is not very helpful for anybody. So we want to be able to name that. So please do subscribe to the channel, be very, very helpful. So in terms of today, so the main themes that we're going to be looking at, we've got an NYSCP update, which will be delivered by myself. Kat Morrison, our other policy officer, is going to talk about be aware. Karen's going to talk about improving attendance for or with a social worker, and for working together with children with a social worker. And then Julie's going to talk about safeguarding evaluation and a new safeguarding.
Other way around, Hayden.
Sorry,
you keep muddling your Karens and your Julies.
Yeah, it's on the other way around to the slides. And then how these things can be approved as well. So that's going to be everything that we're going to talk about today. So in terms of the update, so first off is information from our MACE update. So in terms of vapes, trading standards along with other local partners are undertaking work with retailers around the selling of vapes to children. There's an increased trend of vapes being used by young people, and in some cases the trading of vapes to other young people as well. A particular note appears to be geek bars that, given their colourful nature and range of flavours, are increasingly popular amongst young people. Sextortion has been identified as an emerging issue for young people within schools through MACE Level 2 meetings. Children are being targeted through social media and accepting requests to connect. Perpetrators are often then moving them very quickly away into other platforms where they're encouraged to join video with sexual activity. The Home Office has extended the current NRM project, so that will be running for a further 12 months. And partners are also requested to promote the Partnership Information Sharing Form. More information about that will be available later on in the presentation. Work's also continuing on a development of resources for parents and carers for the Be Aware Knowledge Hub, which is what Kat is going to talk to us today. And there's been a lot of consultation with parents and carers, young people, etc. But she will go into that later on. So in terms of working with schools, one of the things that we're trying to do is work closer with schools as a partnership. And so one of those things is the NYSCP has become responsible for the delivery of these termly sessions. So the DSL networks are open to all schools within North Yorkshire, and it's hopefully going to be a way for us to improve the way that we share information two ways, because we want information coming back to us as well. We are planning, we're quite excited about this, a DSL conference in October, which will be open to all schools. This will be free. There will be a limited number of spaces. You will not be able, if you've got got 2 or 3 DSLs in the schools, your DSL and deputy DSLs, you won't be able to send them all because we want to make sure that there is the ability for as many schools to get there as possible. But this is going to be available for all DSLs. So what I would suggest is there is going to be a letter coming out together with some information about Be Aware next week, which will also have a link for you to be able to book this. I would advise booking it this side of the summer holidays as opposed to the latter, so make sure you get your place. All schools have been contacted through the head teacher emails to ask them to create a dsl@yourschool.domain email address. So we've suggested this be an email forwarded so it can go to your DSLs directly, so it comes into the DSL mailbox and then goes out to whatever personal account that's links to, rather than being another email address for people to check. So if anybody's got the mic on, could you please just make sure you're on mute? So that's the way that we've suggested to do it. Some schools have contacted and said, well, I'm the DSL and I'm also the head teacher. Do I really need 2 email addresses? No, if you're the head teacher and the DSL, then please you can use your head teacher email address to just save you a little bit of having to check multiple things, although as a forwarding address, it should just be forwarded straight on anyway. If you've already submitted your email address through the link that was also on that form, thank you very much. However, if you've submitted your personal email address as opposed to either a DSL or a head teacher we will be contacting you and asking you to create one of the other to nominate which one you want for the DSL. So that's that in relation to the DSL. The School Child Protection Manual, as you know, we've had a new Keeping Children Safe in Education, which comes into effect from the 1st of September this coming academic year. So obviously the School Child Protection Manual is in the process of being updated. We have a closing date for that to be completed of the 19th of August. It's in its last stages. There's been some significant reviews. Because the document has changed so much, what we're actually doing is we're not highlighting the changes in terms of the document this year because the whole thing has changed. What we are doing, however, is highlighting where you need to customize the document instead. So those areas where it's highlighted that you need to customize, that's only the first part you need to read through. The whole of the document you need to make sure is fitting with the practice within your school and amend any other sections as appropriate as well. This is not just a very quick and straightforward find and replace in Word, and it never should be either. It must be, there needs to be ownership within schools of this document. So that is coming. It should be with you midway through August. I know that the timing's not ideal. Many people would have liked it before, but these things do take time to develop. There will also be additional practice guidance in terms of the manual as well as the template policy, so that we're separating them out because there was some confusion with people publishing the whole of the manual when it should have only been part A last year and that sort of thing. So we're trying to sort out some of those confusions there, but that will be with you very shortly and certainly before the beginning of next term. In terms of the school safeguarding audit, as you know, the partnership does a biennial audit of schools. We provide you with an audit tool in order to be able to do that, and it's every other year now, so the next academic year is when we start to do the audit as well. So the audit tool is being redeveloped. We're trying to obviously cut out as much repetition as we can. We're incorporating Keeping Children Safe in Education, September 22, etc., etc. And we're looking for the audit to commence sometime in September. It's hoped we'll get the tool with you with the manual because it will form part of the School Child Protection Manual in the future. So we will update it on a yearly basis, but the audit will only take place with the partnership on a biennial basis. But in terms of we're trying to streamline it so that it makes it much more clearer for schools about what stage you're at in terms of that audit process. All schools are required to respond using the NYSCP tool. We have had people contacting us saying, you know, we're a MAT, we've got multiple schools and stuff like that. But the problem is there are multiple MATs within North Yorkshire, and we need to be able to benchmark everybody equally. And we can't do that when everybody's got different tools. So in order for the partnership to undertake its function and to understand what that structure is, then we need to make sure everybody's using the same tool. So we had 99.7% return rate last time. It was excellent. We want 100% on this. So reporting of this tool must go through governors or your governing process before it and approved before it is sent to us. Like last time, any schools which send it to us without it being approved by their governing process, their full governing body, or whatever is the equivalent, if that's a proprietor or trustees, then it will get sent back to you for that to be approved, and then that will cause delays. It causes more work for you. It causes a lot more work for us. Please help us by making sure that you go through all of the stages rather than submitting it too early. So the new tool will include the checklist system, as I'd already mentioned, and while we're bringing forward the start date by a couple of months so that it gives you more work to deal with it, we are not bringing the closing date earlier. It is still the 31st of March, so you will have lots of time to be able to undertake the audit and to go forward from there as well. In terms of other policies and procedures that are out there, there is the Violence Against Women and Girls. A new overarching strategy is being produced by the Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner. It identifies 6 objectives which aim to create a tangible change which the Commissioner is asking to be judged against. So this is about ensuring all women and girls are listened to, including those from underrepresented communities, that they tackle the root cause of violence against women and girls with prevention and early intervention as well. Increasing the public confidence and trust with North Yorkshire Police, about strengthening partnerships so that all agencies can work together to address the challenges to solve some of the issues in relation to violence against women and girls. There is about evidence, the support of evidence support that's available for victims and survivors, and invest in early intervention to identify and to stop potential offenders and changing the behaviour of those who've already offered or to prevent reoffending. So there's a lot of things in there. I haven't put the link on the screen, but if you go onto our website, there is a link to the OPFCC's website where this strategy is available. It's on our homepage on the news section, and there'll be more coming out. I think that it was actually included in the NYSCP bulletin this time as well. In terms of the partnership information sharing form, I touched on this earlier. This has been updated and it's available from our website under Forms for Professionals. Basically, the purpose of this form is where something doesn't reach the threshold sort of standards, but you do have a concern as a professional. You know, it might be you've seen a concerning incident, or there's been some sort of suspicious activity, or some sort of unusual exchange between people, or just generally something when you look and you think that this isn't right, somebody needs to know about it, then you can submit this information via intelligence to the police. That information, while the information will go in with who has submitted it, that would then be stripped from that information so that only a very limited number of intelligence people would actually know that. other officers would not know who it was. So you know, then that wouldn't get passed on. So it shouldn't impact things like your relationships with people if you have mentioned something like this. So please use it as a tool, because obviously everything's a jigsaw puzzle, and the more pieces of the picture that we have in place, the better it is for us to be able to identify any concerns and to ensure that children and young people are safeguarded. In terms of the partnership awards, we've held our first lot of awards. So the people who won this was Hambleton Fast Social Workers for the great work that they've undertaken in promoting the Strengthened Relationships practice model and used networks to support children at risk of harm. Helen Lavender, the School Police Liaison Officer, for the great work that has been undertaken that resulted in partners having confidence in discussing both formally and informally to identifying risks and actions to early intervention approach, which has been benefited the MACE area immensely. Excuse me. Jess Ward from Inspire Youth for the great work undertaken in supporting the Be Aware consultation. This has been vital in gathering the voices of young people to enable us to share key messages to keep young people safe and to tackle exploitation across the county. Anthony Kent, Police Community Support Safety Hub at Richmondshire for the great work and creative thinking in how to approach the disruption of some challenges we've had around child exploitation. Excuse me. And Karen Hedgley, the designated nurse for keeping children safe, for children and children in care, about being instrumental in the campaign for sudden unexpected deaths, and the work about the Safer Sleep campaign. So if you know of any work that has been done by a member of staff, a volunteer, or a group or a team, or even a school, or anything like that, you can submit a recommendation for the Partnership Awards. The link is on the screen there. You can download the form from our website as well, and then just submit it to the NYSCP mailbox, and we'll look at that for the next awards. So if you've got any nominations, please let us know. In terms of upcoming training, we've got our quickfire updates masterclass. So this is our Heinz 57 varieties of safeguarding type of one, where we've got lots of different topics up for discussion. That's at the end of this month. We take a break from the masterclasses over the August and holidays, and then we return back in September, and there we're looking at the Halo project. I mentioned before about the face-to-face conference for designated safeguarding leads. That will be on the 13th of October. On the 20th of October, we've got the early years providers and childminders special masterclass. Just to be clear, the DSL Masterclass is for school DSLs. It's not for suppliers or anything like that. The early years providers and childminders masterclass will be their equivalent event, although obviously not as large. In October, we'll also be looking at harmful sexual behaviours, and we'll also have our last quickfire updates at the end of the year as well. So I'll hand now over to Kat to talk to us about our Be Aware Hub.
Just bear with me 1 second. Okay, right, thank you. Welcome everybody and good afternoon. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Kat Morrison. So I've been working as a policy and development officer for Safeguarding Children Partnership, just like Hayden, since summer last year. My focus has been the development of our Be Aware work, which is focusing on child exploitation, and I'm here today to talk you through the resource and its development, where we have new specifically designed resources for for parents and carers and young people. Taking up about 15 minutes of your time today, just talking you through the website and its development, starting with the background and the original concept of Be Aware, through, you know, how we've built Be Aware and the consultation work that's occurred. I'm going to take you through bits of the content. Obviously, I can't do a site run through, but I'll talk you through what we've got on there, and how you can use the site in school settings to help support young people and families across North Yorkshire and raise awareness so we can all tackle child exploitation together. So I'm sure all of you are aware, but for those of you who may not be, we did have a dedicated Be Aware professionals page previously on our partnership website, designed as an online knowledge hub geared at professionals to help tackle and prevent child exploitation in North Yorkshire. It was launched in March 21 with key information for professionals, with resources across our 7 themes of child exploitation. So if you're unsure of what our 7 themes are, I've just detailed them here as part of our May strategy. They are child sexual exploitation, child criminal exploitation, that includes county lines, contextual safeguarding, harmful sexual behaviour, missing from home and care, modern slavery and child trafficking, and online exploitation. So that professional site is still there. Again, we've kept it up to date with all the key information and resources, including how to spot the signs, what you can do if you're concerned about a child, and a range of resources you can use throughout your work with children and families that you may be working with. At this point, I thought it would just be a really quick, useful, want to give you a really quick overview of what exploitation actually looks like in North Yorkshire. And the first and most important thing to highlight here is that despite North Yorkshire being a low crime, largely rural county, criminal and sexual exploitation, all forms of exploitation, happens here too. There is a common misconception that it doesn't happen here, or and that exploitation is only an issue for larger cities and more urban areas, as this is what we tend to see portrayed more in the media. But unfortunately, it can happen. It can happen in all towns and all rural areas. It can affect all communities and children from any walk of life. Now, the way in which criminals target and groom children in rural areas can be slightly different to those living in cities. Children living in the countryside and those rural, more isolated areas, criminals target that isolation and the boredom and the lack of opportunity by offering that which young people often crave the most, which is excitement, risk, attention, easy money, gifts, things like that. And they also look to target young people in the countryside because there's often less of a police presence, more unmanned bus and train stations, sparser CCTV, and they take advantage of the misconception that exploitation doesn't happen here, as they feel that people won't necessarily be looking for it. Let's not forget as well that exploitation takes place both online and in the places and spaces where young people are spending their time, often with the two overlapping seamlessly for young people. Places and spaces are basically anywhere where a young person will spend their time. So, you know, bus stations, parks, houses, beauty spots, sports venues, anywhere. And online through people being targeted perhaps through social media and online gaming, through, for example, posts that they see glamorizing drug taking and encouraging people to try substances. So the key thing here really is, with all of these signs of exploitation in North Yorkshire, they can be quite hidden. The signs can be difficult to spot, and it requires everyone, all of us, to be curious and to try and kind of have it in the back of our minds that these could be signs of exploitation. If you see a change in a child's behaviour, it's about being aware that it's not necessarily just about that child being naughty or it's their fault. It's looking at the context of what they're doing and that they may be a victim of exploitation. So when we moved to develop our Be Aware hub for young people and parents and carers, we wanted to make sure that the website was as relevant and impactful as possible. So we've done a wealth of consultation work right across the county over the last year or so. Yes, we consulted with professionals, but most importantly, we wanted to hear from young people and parents and carers about what they wanted. So we've completed workshops with the Police, Fire and Crime Commission youth forums, youth councils, Parents Against Child Exploitation and our Trusted Relationships project. We also did some fantastic detached youth work. Hayden mentioned it earlier with Jess Ward and Inspire Youth. We got to speak to, you know, well over 50 young people about their thoughts about what child exploitation was and what they actually wanted to know about it and why it was important. And we used some of those sessions for the young people to develop some content and some of the visual aspects of our site as well. And you can see that really nicely throughout our kind of designs and logos of our site. So if you look at one of the examples here, this is a photograph that was actually taken by young people as part of our detached youth work project. And then we've asked our design teams to convert those into these kind of visual line drawings, which the young people really liked. So just in terms of our consultation process, I wanted to share some of the main points that our parents and carers and young people told us they wanted to know. Primarily raising awareness of child exploitation, highlighting it does happen here, that it's a form of child abuse and that all young people and families are victims to it. You know, there's no young person will ever choose to be exploited. It's about seeing them as the victims throughout. Parents really wanted the site to be very mindful of language, again ensuring that there's no victim blaming in our content and again highlighting that it's a form of child abuse. They wanted those signs of exploitation to be very clear, presented in a variety of formats, but also to highlight the message that there's no definitive kind of sign, and sometimes parents and carers will often spot a change in behaviour and not understand it, maybe think it's just kids being kids or teenagers growing up, but those changes in behaviour can be an indicator and parents may often be the first one to notice that. Parents also wanted us to show very clearly what they could do if they were worried and who they could talk to, and finally the parents wanted to have an increase in confidence to talk to young people about exploitation and keeping safe, and they wanted the resources and the information to guide them through some of those conversations. Our young people, when we were talking to young people about exploitation, the terminology they found very hard to kind of talk about what exploitation actually was and what it looked like, and as a result of that they told us that clear examples, cases and scenarios were a much easier way to kind of explain the different circumstances and what exploitation can look and feel like. So we've really tried to do that in a variety of formats. Again, they wanted to know the signs, what to look out for, both for them and for their mates. They wanted to hear real experiences and real stories, and they really wanted it to be avoid all the professional jargon that we all hear all day, every day. And the most important one for young people is they just didn't want to be told what not to do. They didn't want to be told, like, you mustn't go out, you mustn't chat to people online. We know that's not realistic or feasible, but it was much more kind of those practical bits of advice that they can follow when they're out and about with their mates that might just minimise some of that risk. So I'm just showing you now just a quick screen grab of our homepage. Firstly, those of you who've seen the homepage before, you'll notice we've had a full rebrand of all our logos and our images. This again has been developed in partnership with young people, telling us how they wanted it to look. And you'll see now we have those very distinct 4 specific entry points, each designed with content and information designed for that group. So we've got young people, parents and carers, professionals. We also have a communities and local businesses section that we've targeted again to the kind of places and spaces where young people are spending their time and where exploitation may be happening. So think about your nighttime economy places, you know, your bars, your clubs, your hotels, taxi companies and things like that. So there's a wealth of information on there about the signs that they can spot as well. And we also have right smack in the bottom the I Need Help Now button, which will just direct any user straight to our North Yorkshire Safeguarding Children Partnership Worried About a Child page, which will show you kind of how to make a referral for immediate support. With the young people's page, once you enter the young people's section, you are taken to these kind of little mini subheadings. Again, very much based on what the young people wanted us to hear or wanted to know about what exploitation is, what the signs are, what help is out there, and how do I keep safe. And the key points on the young people's page. So as I've said, I can't take you through the site way beyond my technology capabilities, but I really would encourage you to go and have a look at some of the resources on there, because, you know, our hope is that you use this with some of the young people in the school settings. But with regards to the content, like we said, we've tried to present it in as many different formats as possible, sharing the same message, whether it's over an image or a text or a video. We haven't reinvented the wheel in a lot of cases because there's some fantastic resources already out there nationally, but we've collated them and we've put them into the context of North Yorkshire. So you guys know, and you can confidently say to parents and young people that this is the place to go for North Yorkshire. This is kind of the one-stop shop where you find out the information, it's relevant, it's accurate, and it's up to date. So we are explaining about exploitation without using jargon, and the different types of exploitation and what it actually looks and feels like for young people and their friends. It explains why people are actually bothered about it. When we were talking to young people, they were kind of like, well, why is everyone so bothered about it? And so we talk about the impact it can have on young people and those around them. And one of the things you'll notice when you do have a look around is the right throughout our content, we break it up with comments and quotes from young people who have actually shared their experiences and their real stories. And throughout the content, we think this brings real meaning and power, because it takes it straight back to real experiences and those who've been directly affected. We again have really clear explanations of the signs. But often we know by the very nature of exploitation and the perpetrator and the person that's grooming that young person, the young person, it will be almost impossible for them to spot the signs when it's happening to themselves. So we've shared what those signs can look like in a friend, so they can spot if they were worried about someone else, but also kind of how exploitation may feel for a young person. So as we've said, that they may not feel that they're being taken advantage of. They may feel like they're in a really positive relationship and that it's exciting and special. So it's just to kind of raise that awareness as well. We have a section including healthy relationships. So again, young people can start to kind of explore those relationships that they have, not necessarily with a boyfriend or girlfriend, but with a friend, with someone they're chatting to online. And there's some really nice interactive quizzes on there to just get people to ask those questions about whether that relationship is healthy and equal, which we think is really useful. We've got a clear section for young people highlighting what they can do if they're worried, right from kind of being in immediate danger to, you know, you're worried about a friend, how do you talk to an adult about that? Or you're worried about yourself, something's not quite right, how do you start that conversation? And we've supplied like a one-stop shop list of all the local and national support services that can be available through a wide variety of platforms. You know, young people can go online through social media and contact that help if they need it. And as I've said before, we've got a section about keeping safe. So when they're out and about with their friends or they're online, really practical things that young people can do, you know, when they're out and they're taking risks. Young people do take risks, we know that. But even if some of those things kind of stay in the back of their mind, it can help reduce some of that risk taking and minimise the risk of perpetrators targeting them for exploitation. Our parents page is very similar. We have those specific entry points, but again, worded slightly differently based on what parents told us they wanted to know. So this one's got that section about talking to your child about exploitation as well. Just very quickly taking you through some of those key elements. Again, sharing the information in a variety of formats, using the voices from parents and carers as well as we've used voices from young people, so they can see what it looks and feels like for them as well. Sharing those key messages about exploitation and the process of grooming and what that can look like and what that can look like for a parent looking in on that as well. Highlighting the signs of exploitation, and I've already said it's not an exhaustive list, but for parents to be aware of changes and it's not just like, oh, it's just normal teenage behaviour. The site has a lot about empowering parents, about talking about exploitation and trying to, you know, build that confidence to tackle it, tackle the knowledge themselves. You know, for me, knowledge is always power as a parent, and the more we know about it, the more we can kind of raise awareness of it and spot those signs, communicate with children at the earliest stage. Again, we've got that clear section of national and local offers of help. And as we said, there's some really good tips and tricks for talking to your children about exploitation. We do it as parents all the time. We talk about road safety, drug safety, but there's a lack of confidence and awareness about having those conversations about exploitation. And we've broken it down into kind of conversations about healthy relationships and consent, as well as online safety, all elements that would contribute to exploitation, but it's kind of building those fundamental that fundamental awareness of risk taking and risk management. So on both of our parent and carer and young people pages, we do have 2 additional sections. So the first is called Our Stories from Our County, and it's a section of the site that shows the stories and experiences of real young people and families in North Yorkshire who've been through this. We're hoping that this will be a growing format, so if people do want to share their stories, they can get in contact with us and it will build. Currently we have a fantastic interview on there. I really would encourage you to go and have a look at it. A young lad who was caught up in criminal exploitation and has subsequently come out the other end of it and really wanted to share his story and help other young people with their experiences as well. But following that conversation, we then go and have the same conversation with his mum, and she talks about how it felt for her looking in and that feeling of powerlessness as someone's kind of manipulating those relationships with her son. So it's very powerful, very insightful. Please go and have a look. And then we also have a Jargon Buster section. So it came back to us time and time again about use of language and really being clear about use of language throughout the site. So we thought it would be useful to have a kind of an overview page that really clears up everything around exploitation, be it the professional jargon that we use or the language and slang that's used by young people and perpetrators, because, you know, most of it's absolute gobbledygook to me when I hear some of the things that young people say, and I've been on this quite a few times having to look things up. We've got fantastic national resources that we've collated on there. So the Children's Society have 2 amazing resources called Slang and Emoji Dictionary, which are on there, and then we've updated that with other reference lists and words that we've picked up as well. Just finally on here, I just wanted to add in here, this is a brand new resource that's been added onto our section, onto Be Aware, and it is on the professionals page, but it's about talking about exploitation and the language we use, and to promote the use of positive language. It's been created to help practitioners consider the words and the phrases and the jargon that we do use when speaking to and about young people experiencing exploitation. So it encourages consideration of the impact our language can have, and particularly around victim blaming language, the impact it can have for children and young people, as well as parents and carers affected by exploitation. And it really asks us to consider whether we're only using perhaps victim blaming language or considering a single story or a single point of view about that young person. We're not looking at the other side, what could be happening. We're not exploring more that they may be exploited or being taken advantage of. And that's just not necessarily in our verbal language, but also in our written files, our case notes, etc. So we've got a fantastic pack, a collation of key documents produced across the partnership. And we would really encourage you to use that as a tool in your teams to prompt your own discussions and reflections about our use of language and the impacts it can have. It doesn't have to necessarily be used with relation to exploitation. It just gets us thinking about how we talk about the young people and the families that we work with. You know, I often think, like, how would I feel if that was said about me? That's kind of my key one, and that's really where the guidance takes you on that one. So if we move on to just using the site, we want the Be Aware website to be a source of information for everyone in North Yorkshire, be that professionals, residents, communities, parents, carers and young people. And we hope that the site will be used in numerous ways, but here are just some of the sort of initial suggestions. We really want to raise awareness of child exploitation and the fact that it's happening in North Yorkshire. We see schools playing a massive part in that. You know, we really want you guys to be promoting the messages of Be Aware. We do have partner briefing packs and posters. I believe they're going to be going out to schools and on the DSL emails as well. But we would love those to be up and about on school notice boards, on your safeguarding board that you have on displays in school. We'd love it to be on your school website, or if you have a newsletter, you know, really be promoting this as a fantastic resource for parents and young people to use, as well as professionals. We want the website really to be a tool to start the conversation. Now, whether that's professionals talking in a team meeting, looking at what they're doing to tackle exploitation, or a conversation between a professional and someone they're worried about, or a parent talking to their child. We want this to be that guide and that support to start talking about what's going on. We want it to be a tool that schools can use, so young people can be talking together. So if you're running a session, you can use some of the resources on Be Aware, and, you know, young people can look at recognising the signs and going through some of the scenarios and yeah, talking about what exploitation actually looks and feels like. We want the website to be a source of support for families and young people who may be worried but are a little bit too, you know, unsure about seeking help at the minute. Hopefully this website and the information and the voices shared shows family that they're not alone in this, and that there is guidance out there for them. And as I've mentioned before, this site will grow. It will be continually updated and developed, so you know it's going to be a one-stop shop where to go when you need that up-to-date information. And similarly, you know, we know how creative young people are, you know, far more creative than I'll ever be. But so if you're working with groups of young people and you're delivering some of the content on this site, and they want to produce anything like any graphics, or they want to do any TikToks or something like that, share them with us, and we'll put it on the site and we'll let it grow based on kind of young people's voices and experiences as well. So that's Be Aware in a nutshell, really. I've given you the website content. Over to you guys really to promote it as much as possible. As I've already said, we have the posters and the partner briefing pack. I'll add in the chat in a minute all our social media links, because we had a really strong social media campaign when we launched Be Aware a couple of weeks ago, and the kind of the graphics that we shared on Facebook really took off. Our first one had well over 50 shares. So again, if you've got school social media platforms, please kind of copy and paste off our North Yorkshire Partnership Facebook or Instagram account and get the message out there, because social media really has the power to deliver these messages very quickly and across to the people that we need to see it, because really we want everyone to be seeing this. So yes, thank you so much for taking the time to listen to me. I'm more than happy to take any questions if we're all right for time. I would just also quickly add, if you need there is a slightly longer version of this presentation with Be Aware with a little bit more about the resources, which we have on our YouTube channel. So if you want that and you want to deliver it in like a team meeting, please sign up to our YouTube channel. But yes, if you have any questions, please let me know. Hayden, have you taken control back now?
I've got it, Kat.
Oh, thank you, Karen.
I can't see any questions, so are you all right, Kat,
You're absolutely fine. Go ahead, Karen.
There are any questions there. Thank you for taking control.
Thank you. So good afternoon. I'm Karen Butler, and I'm one of the senior education advisors in the School Improvement Service. And I just wanted really to start my little bit of the presentation by saying a huge thank you really to all of you that work within safeguarding all year, every day. We know it can be difficult, we know it can be emotive, but we really do appreciate all the work that you're doing around safeguarding. So thank you very, very much. Now, to continue to strengthen our safeguarding work in schools and settings, we've been undertaking a series of evaluative exercises to identify potential areas where we can continue to sort of improve and progress. Now, we started first with an analysis of Ofsted inspections, both primary and secondary, that had taken place this academic year, so under the new framework, and where safeguarding was deemed not to be effective. And we kind of picked out the key patterns of weakness within these Ofsted reports. So key areas included adults' knowledge and or understanding of child protection matters. Referrals to outside agencies are not always timely when there are concerns about pupils. And where there is information to other agencies, it sometimes lacks details. Records don't always show what actions have been taken. And specifically in the reports, there was also reference to CPOM's records where actions had not been recorded. And this was in relation to where perhaps a referral had gone in, hadn't met threshold, and then schools hadn't recorded what action they had then taken. So it's important to make sure that, you know, the action that you're taking in school is recorded on that CPOMS, even if a referral doesn't meet threshold. Another area that was identified, you know, not being a weakness, was leaders not examining data or identifying trends. So they were collecting information, but then not looking at it. Leaders not checking the single central record or statutory policies were in place. So that was leading to non-compliance. A real lack of challenge from governors, so them not being sufficiently robust in their quality assurance of safeguarding. Leaders' failure to understand the links between behaviour, attendance, and the importance this has for pupil safety. So, you know, attendance officers or people who manage attendance not linking up with the DSL and not sort of having that information and being curious around that information. And leaders have not been diligent in identifying risks, and so do not keep pupils safe through regular attendance checks or by keeping them safe from bullying or harassment. The curriculum kept cropping up in all of the Ofsted reports where safeguarding wasn't effective. This is still not addressing risks sufficiently or taking into account contextual locality risks, or where there is a curriculum, there is a lack of assessment around pupil knowledge. The systems that are in place for other subjects, you know, your maths, your English, your science, your history, they're not always in place for PSHE, that safeguarding curriculum. There was also a lack of quality assurance around PSHE and that safeguarding element of the curriculum, and that led to lower expectations in PSHE. So they were the things that were really highlighted in the Ofsted inspection reports as being sort of key areas that kept schools from being effective in safeguarding. Now, throughout this academic year, senior education advisors have carried out focused visits related to safeguarding, and we've collated all this information to gain a picture across our county. And as you'll see, a lot of the findings correlate with the Ofsted inspections and what they found. So these are the areas that were least secure in our schools and settings. Schools and settings are not all compliant. Now, this is sometimes in relation to single central records, website, and that includes policies as well. So I just wanted to remind you here that the North Yorkshire Safeguarding Report to Governor template, that has a list of all the policies that are statutory that you need, and also recommended ones. So it's worth having a look and just, you know, double checking that you've got them all in place. HR have been carrying out single central record checks on all what we call category 3 and category 4 schools this year. And but the problem has been that actions have then not been followed through, they've not been completed, or governors haven't checked that they've been completed. So it's making sure that that's all tied in. You know, it's no good having information if you don't do anything about it. Now, the single central record checks carried out by HR will continue to be built into the school improvement offer next year. And also, you know, if you're a category 1 or a category 2 school or an academy, these checks can be brokered as well. And we do really recommend that, you know, you have your single central record, you know, externally validated by somebody, you know, so that they've got that oversight and can really see it, as well as that internal scrutiny. And scrutiny, you know, pops up as a key area for development still. You know, this is not sufficiently robust. You know, systems are not in place that secure that quality assurance. Leadership of safeguarding. So not all those leading safeguarding are keeping up to date with information, attending training. I think, you know, in the analysis that we had, it was about 44% that had not actually attended training, you know, from the beginning of the year to when we carried out these evaluations. So, you know, if you're leading safeguarding, you need to be up to date to disseminate information to your staff team. There's also still work to be completed, like we said, around safeguarding curriculum. This was picked up in the Ofsted reports and it's been picked up in our evaluations as well. Now, we know that schools have a statutory responsibility to meet the requirements of the relationships, you know, sex and health education curriculum, to promote the spiritual, moral, social, cultural, mental and physical developments of pupils, to prepare them for opportunities, responsibilities and experiences of later life, fulfil the public duty of the Equality Act, and also to ensure pupils are taught about safeguarding. You know, that is crucial and must be interwoven into your PSHE schemes of work. Attendance, I'll come on to that a little bit later. Analysis of staff voice shows that staff understanding of part 5 of keeping children safe in education is not as secure as part 1. So people are not as secure with child on child sexual violence and sexual harassment. So it's worth, you know, really thinking about, is that relevant to your school? Governance of safeguarding. The systems and processes in place are not always consistent or robust enough, you know, for governors to assure themselves that safeguarding is effective. And although schools are completing the partnership audit, and 99.7% of them have completed it, we're not seeing that the actions that people put in that audit then translated into action plans put in the school development plans. We're not seeing those actions necessarily completed or progress towards them identified. So, you know, it's important, if you're identifying something, to, you know, to do something about it, follow it through. Don't just complete the audit and then put it to one side. You know, it's a document to support you with effective safeguarding. And also, you know, if you're saying in your values and your ethos that safeguarding is a key priority for your school, then we need to see this reflected in your school documentation, you know, and your key priorities. Now, there are a range of North Yorkshire guidance documents to support schools implement an effective PSHE curriculum to develop policies and whole school approaches to wellbeing. And these are all available, you know, absolutely free through the North Yorkshire Healthy Schools website. There's regular PSHE health and wellbeing newsletters and updates, and they're on the news section of that website as well. Again, all free. We can also provide in North Yorkshire an extensive programme of training. There are PSHE networks, bespoke consultancy, reviews, guidance for governors, senior leaders, subject leaders and teachers and support staff, so that it covers all aspects of health and wellbeing and PSHE. So I've put Claire Barrowman's details up there. She is the Senior Health and Wellbeing Advisor for North Yorkshire. You know, and you can contact her directly to discuss sort of key issues around support for this area. You know, we really need to, you know, think about PSHE as a curriculum subject. You know, it's important that you think how you assess pupils' understanding, how you build in opportunities for revisiting key knowledge, just as any other subject. And PSHE leaders need to ensure that staff have the skills to teach it really well. And equally, then that comes back to the monitoring and the quality assurance. That's all got to be embedded if we're to make sure that this, is a real strength moving forward. I'm just going to briefly touch on attendance. Now, if you have an attendance officer, this is a frontline position to spot safeguarding issues. Persistent absenteeism and sudden changes in patterns of attendance are a key indication that something is wrong. And teachers are also in a key position, and they've got to highlight changes in attendance patterns, because we have to get in the mindset that attendance is everyone's responsibility. But it's vital that this data is then used to prompt questions about underlying trends. That might be for individuals, it might be for cohorts or groups or school-wide, but it is what you do with that information. And the careful monitoring of attendance is key to improving overall performance, but it's also equally important to keeping children safe. Knowing who is absent and why is really fundamental to effective safeguarding. And for that reason, detailed scrutiny of schools' attendance procedures is now at the heart of Ofsted's approach to inspecting safeguarding. We've seen it coming through this year with a lot more focus and questioning around attendance, and this is going to increase as well as we move into inspections next academic year. In May this year, the DfE produced new guidance working together to improve attendance. So please ensure that you're familiar with this document and make sure you raise its profile with your governors and other leaders in school. So what next, really? Now, looking at the areas that were less secure from our visits and all the information that we've collated, we've identified some key lines of inquiry that you may want to take back and explore with your school, or you may think, one relates to you or more. And it's, just to sort of prompt thinking, questioning in your role as designated safeguarding leads. So really, does your school publish the statutory safeguarding information on the website? How do you know who checks it? How often do they check it? Is there a governor that checks it once a term? Is that built into your general work that you do? Does your school or setting policies meet safeguarding requirements? I mentioned that template for governors, which lists all the key policies. That report is one that you can use annually, but it's a quick guide to what policies you need. To what extent do your school policies contribute to a vigilant and secure culture of safeguarding? And how do you know they're being effectively implemented? And how do governors know they're effectively implemented? What quality assurance do you do in relation to those policies? What's the quality of PSHE? How is the PSHE curriculum adapted to reflect the school's context and community? How do you use assessment in PSHE? Is monitoring scheduled across the year? We don't want you to think of PSHE as a secondary subject. It's got to be central and of equal value to the others. Are safeguarding systems robust and understood? Do safeguarding leaders regularly analyse trends and patterns? And again, how is this data used to inform policies, to inform training and the safeguarding curriculum? If you've identified something, it might be that your curriculum needs adapting. If you've done a needs analysis, it might be that your training staff meeting calendar needs to be adapted. And are all staff aware of their role within this? For example, around behaviour and attendance and, the information that they need to share. And how do you check staff understanding? Do you regularly carry out needs analysis, plan training that's bespoke to your staff needs? Do you plan knowledge checks into staff training or staff meetings? We've seen some really good practice where 1-minute guides are integrated. The partnership 1-minute guides have been integrated into staff meetings. They're a quick read and then there's a quick knowledge check. Other good practice we've seen is around scenarios that can be used as discussion points and then knowledge checks and agree, you can agree in pairs or as a group, how you would deal with such situation, so integrating things like that and make your training bespoke for your needs. How do you as a leader keep up to date? It's really important that you keep up to date and make sure you attend, that regular training. What systems are in place for internal scrutiny? So do you have a schedule of checks? For example, do you have first of the month checks on the single central record? Does a governor come in once a month to check an element of that single central record? Do you check CPOMs on a termly basis? What do you do with that data? Do you have a policy schedule that outlines when key safeguarding policies have got to be, updated? Governors, is there evidence of robust challenge? Can you see this in governor minutes? Now, we found, a really useful exercise with governors is to, perhaps a safeguarding governor to look at the minutes and to highlight where there's challenge. Then you can see at a glance if you're providing that robust challenge to leaders. What quality assurance have governors carried out? Have they met with the safeguarding lead? Have they personally come to look at the single central record? Have they carried out pupil voice, staff voice? We know all these things can be really powerful. And do governors follow up on actions? So it's, in minutes where there's been something highlighted, is that then noted as an action and followed through? Do you act on a single central record audit or a review, and just making sure that it's all tied together? How are leaders held to account? And I touched briefly on this before, but are the actions from the partnership audit complete, or they should be part of your school development plan? And if safeguarding is a high priority for your school, is it visible as a key priority in your school development plan? Now, we've put these key lines of inquiry just for you to have a reflect, and to sort of think about these. Can you provide a robust answer to these? What evidence do you have which supports these? Or do you need to investigate some of these areas a little bit further? Now, to support you in your work around safeguarding, we've appointed 2 new posts to our school improvement team. These safeguarding advisors, they're key to meeting the priorities of the Council's improvement strategy that puts safeguarding at the forefront of all our work, but they're also there to increase capacity and support you in your work around safeguarding. From September, the safeguarding advisors will work across a range of schools and settings in North Yorkshire, including maintained schools and academies who support children from early years to post-16. So the role will be a supportive role. They'll advise, deliver development activities, audit, review. It's an enhanced support package for safeguarding for schools. And the safeguarding advisors are a traded service, so you can commission them directly. You might be signposted to them for their work, or for our most vulnerable schools, certain allocations of days and time might be integrated into a school partnership improvement plan for your school or for your setting. And the work of the safeguarding advisors is there to complement that of the senior education advisors, who will continue to carry out focused monitoring visits alongside, obviously, the health and safety hands team. Now, it's usually at this point in the term where leaders start to draft new priorities for next academic year, and securing strong, effective safeguarding is at the heart of all our work. So, consider how these 2 advisors can support you through your training, advice and support. I've put their contact details down. So like I said, they're part of their work is traded. Anybody can contact them directly and broker some support. And additional support that will be to our most vulnerable schools that we've identified that need that will be dates that will be confirmed in the autumn term. So is there any questions? I can't see any. So thank you very much for this afternoon. If you do have any questions that you think about later, just please drop me an email. It's just karen.butler@northyorks.gov.uk, and I'll pop it in the chat bar as well. Thank you very much.
Hi everybody, it's Julie Bunn here, Virtual School Head, taking over from Karen there, and I'm going to talk to you now about improving attendance for all children with a social worker. The virtual school has 3 duties. We have our major predominant duty is for looked after children. I hold the pupil premium for those children, and I'm a corporate parent. We have a duty for previously looked after children, so children who were adopted, special guardianship and child arrangement order, and there we have advice and information to designated teachers and to parents. Our third duty, which started in September, which actually is still a pilot from the DFE, is a strategic role for children in need and child protection, and actually any child who's ever had a social worker, and for kind of reporting purposes, any child who's ever had a social worker in the last 6 years. So with that complication over, you just need to remember that if we're coming into school for a looked after child, there'll be lots of direct support. We'll be working with your designated teacher. Some of you will know us really well, probably wish you didn't know us quite as well as you do. If we come into school for advice and information for adoption SGO or for your child in need and child protection, you might only see us once or twice a term. So that'll be the difference with some of the schools and our 3 duties. Next slide, please. So today we'll cover how to improve attendance for children who have had a social worker. Thanks, Hayden. So why should DSLs, why should designated safeguarding leads worry about attendance? Well, at the moment, I would say we are all, anyone involved in education, anybody involved in children's lives, we're all worrying about attendance at the moment. A 90% attendance rate means that a pupil misses the equivalent of a half of lessons every week. If a pupil has a 90% attendance rate through Key Stage 3 and 4, they'll have missed 1/2 of the school year in that time. A pupil with an 80% attendance rate over 5 years misses a complete year of school. And this is what it means, guys. We've really got to work on much higher attendance for children with social workers. So in attendance terms, that would mean the pupil has missed 40 days of education in a school year, just over a day per week. So if a pupil's attendance remains at 80% from year 1 to year 11, they'll miss more than 2 full years of education. And actually, when we were looking at our attendance rate in secondary for children with a social worker, it was falling at around 82% in the last few months. So it is something that we all need to be hugely concerned about. But just to let you know that this year, since we have had our new duty for virtual school, which Amy Howe, our assistant head, will tell you a little bit more after I've spoken. We've delivered training to social care, to all of social care and early help by virtual school, and we had all of our experts, some of whom are in the room today, from education and skills and inclusion. So social workers are now receiving training on education, and I will be honest with you that virtual school, we have to have 3 feet. We have to have 1 foot in education, 1 foot in social care, and another foot in inclusion, because we need to bring all of those 3 services together and all that knowledge, holistic knowledge around the child. So you will hear me mention systemic thinking, systemic working, because a child doesn't not go to school for one reason that actually sits in the school. They don't often not go to school for a reason that just sits in the home. It's looking at all of the systems and all of the networks around that child to see why and they're not going to school, or how we can encourage them back into school. And I will again be honest, and I've been a virtual head for 7 or 8 years now. And when we first started talking to social workers until fairly recently, you know, they would say, well, that's education stuff. You know, that's not really my area, or I'm not discussing school attendance. That's not the case now. We really know through all of the work that's gone on over COVID through keeping children safe in education, social workers are now determined that the children will go to school, and we can see attendance as part of care planning. We can see that social workers are really becoming much more interested and sees the value in the whole safety around the child by being in school. Thanks. Next slide, please. So this was just a little slide to show you the training that all children's social care have received. So they've received training on early years, mainstream, special education, including alternative provision, education other, such as EHE, any exclusions, and child missing education, and post 16. Thanks, Hayden. Next slide, please. And early education, our early years. Why is that hugely important, especially for children with a social worker? Well, without a high quality early education, at-risk children are 25% more likely to drop out of school, 40% more likely to become a teen parent, 50% more likely to be placed in special education, 60% more likely never to attend college, and 70% more likely to be arrested for a violent crime. So getting our children into quality early education is vital, and especially more for our disadvantaged children, for our children who've suffered adverse childhood experiences, for the children who are known to social care. Thanks, Hayden. Now, recently, the Children's Commissioner, we've had so many reports, and everybody must be, it's really tough for schools at the minute to. You've had the white paper, you've had the green paper, the behaviour guidance has just been published today. We've had attendance guidance, and here's another one. So this is the findings of the Children's Commissioner Attendance Audit. It follows a huge survey, probably the largest ever I've ever known of children, called the Big Ask. Following the Big Ask and following concerns around attendance, the Children's Commissioner has gone out with her team and spoken to children who were missing education to find out, what their issues were. If you haven't read that audit, please read it. It's there's some really useful recommendations in the audit. Next slide, please. So the Commissioner has said here what she heard was inspiring. She's spoken to children who feel that their school has saved their life. And I speak to children who say that. I speak to children who say certain teachers saved my life. Without them, I wouldn't be here. And they mean it. The love, the welcome, the care that they get in schools, that certain adult at the point in their life that they needed it actually can make a huge difference for children, for vulnerable children. So whose school has given them skills and direction to look forward to the future with confidence. But some children she spoke to did not have a positive experience with education and felt let down by a fractured system and a system that wasn't designed around them. So until we have a system that's designed for and around children, using their and their families' voices as the catalyst for making things better, we can't be confident that every child's happy, healthy and safe. So we need everyone who's a role in children's lives to design and implement systems and services with that same vision at their heart. Thanks, Hayden. So there are ambitions within the attendance audit. And the first one is to ask, listen and communicate. So decisions about children's education need to be made with children and their families and other adults in their lives. And in social care, we call that the network, really understanding the network around a child. Excuse me, I should have said this afternoon, guys. I've had COVID this week, so you might not get the delivery from me that you normally get, but I'm doing my best. All schools to create a culture which prioritises, and I love the word obsesses about attendance and promotes this message among children and parents, and schools and wider services to build trusted and supportive relationships for those children who are persistently or severely absent. And all attendance and behaviour policy documents to have a version that's accessible and in child-friendly language. And again, I think that's really important. A lot of our policies as we mentioned earlier, sometimes have terminology in them that children don't listen to, or it doesn't feel right. And I think Kat was mentioning that earlier. I think it's really important that if you have attendance policies and behaviour policies, we should have a version that's child friendly. Ambition 2, meet the children where they are. So all children receive support in school through strong families of schools. We saw some great examples of schools that developed on-site alternative provision, so that if children couldn't attend mainstream, they could be somewhere that they continue to have those relationships with school. We saw that running through the Green Paper as well, didn't we? Ambition 3 is exclusion is a trigger for intervention. And I must admit, after being, some of us have been in this game a long time, and we can often see that when a child is excluded, there's then a little bit of a, well, what now? And nothing really happens for that child, to mend what has happened. So children should receive a fantastic education regardless of setting, and receive targeted support following an exclusion or a suspension. And when a child with a social worker is excluded, they should be in alternative provision from the first day. Exclusion should always lead to an intervention. Whenever a child's removed from the classroom, this should be an opportunity to learn about the child and to find out about their underlying needs. An exclusion should become a trigger for a package of support around the child. And when a child is excluded for a safeguarding reason, such as carrying a defensive weapon, this needs to trigger a referral to MAST. Okay. Next slide, please. I know I'm trying to read both.
Sorry.
I mean, there are. It depends. If the child's SIN or CP or lack, then ring virtual school. Right at the end of this, that we do have the early help school consultants, so I would ring them. And I am going to talk about the we need to work with you, because there will be an attendance support team. So if you just kind of not hang fire, you can still put your questions in, but I am coming on to the work that we're going to be doing in the next year about some attendance support teams, which hopefully will help you with that. And I have got the attendance average for children with a social worker coming up as well. Next slide, please. So the next ambition, oh, sorry, that happened this morning as well, didn't it? Ambition 4, children, no child should feel the need to miss school to support their family. This is all around young carers. And actually the Children's Commission has been very helpful to virtual school there, and said that she thinks actually our role should be extended to support young carers as well. Thank you very much, School Commissioner. But if that's the case, we need the resourcing. And at the minute, we haven't got that. But she makes a very good point that young carers need to be included, I think, in pupil premium. I think they are very vulnerable. So let's see what happens. The DFE will listen, to the Children's Commissioner. I'm not saying it will make a difference to anything immediately, but she is raising those issues about young carers, which I think is really important. Ambition 5. Attendance is everyone's business. So school leaders have a relentless focus on attendance and work together with local authorities to make sure that children are supported in school and attend regularly. It needs to be everyone's business, all services, or every part of the local authority. So we have, across the country, I think we've realised that we do need better join up between services that support children, with cross-cutting partnerships, and discuss those at risk of becoming missing from education. And we must have a plan in place for every child who's not yet returned to school or is attending inconsistently. And ambition 6, no more known unknowns. So lack of information should no longer be the reason why children are not receiving a suitable education. Support data sharing across agencies and services. Thanks, Hayden. So here we have Nadeem Zahawi in his previous role, and he was bringing together all of the top people across the services in an attendance alliance. So we can tell here how important to the government and the DFE the look, the progress that needs to be made on attendance. So the Attendance Alliance was formed, and persistence absence increased to 16.3 in secondary schools in autumn from 15% in 2019. So leaders in social care have pledged to engage with their members and professionals they represent to make sure they're following best practice in improving attendance within their day-to-day work. And the Alliance is formed with the single aim of raising attendance so that obviously it's that understanding that children are better off in education and all barriers should be removed so that they can access education. Thanks, Hayden. So here we have some of the other big players. We've got the Children's Commissioner in the middle there, but we've got Amanda Spielman, Ofsted Chief Inspector, and Isabel Trowler, Chief Social Worker. And they've issued a joint call for all of those who engage with children. So this is everyone working together, parents, teachers, GPs, police, social workers. I would have liked to have seen health there as well, to break down any barriers that they find to children being in school. And as I say, so many information, webinars are going on for social workers. I've never seen as much around training up of social workers as I have in the past few months about how and why they should be interested in their children's education, and particularly attendance. Thanks, Hayden. What we find in virtual school is really, it does come down to relationships and around attendance and around any issue where you're kind of breaking that cycle, breaking the habit. It is being brave and doing the right thing and doing what you would do for your own child, good enough for your own child. And it's all about relationships. You know, 98% of people agree that one teacher can change the course of a student's life. And as I've said, we meet children who were in care, who are now care experienced, who will tell us the name of the teacher that made a difference. You know, I wouldn't be in college if it wasn't for Mr. So-and-so. I wouldn't be where I am if it wasn't for Miss. You know, and they at lots of points in their time, in their life, where everything else in their life is turmoil, they can rely on the love and care that they get in school, you know, and we understand that. And so I'm just reminding you that in difficult times, we need you to be brave for the most needy children, the children who haven't got loving family homes, the children who have suffered abuse and neglect, the children who have suffered huge adverse childhood experiences. We need you, and we need you to continue to give us those lovely, as Sue puts it, micro moments of well-being, the dosing and spacing, as Dr. Bruce Perry puts, and every interaction is a potential intervention, as Dr. Karen Treisman puts. And thinking back to what we were saying in Kat's talk about be aware, you know, relationships really are everything. One of my young people who's Y11 had a huge turmoil in his life over the past 3 years, and he is being criminally exploited. He didn't go to school for over 2 years. The PRU, one of our PRU's best efforts, we could not get him into school. Social worker couldn't get him into school. He actually moved across the county, working with our SEMH provision. We managed to get together a really bespoke package, and it's his one-to-one tutor that's actually made a real difference for this child. He has push and pull factors at the minute, and those factors include getting £2,000 if he pinches a car. And it's really difficult, isn't it, as a corporate parent to know that these things are going on, and what can we do? Relationships are the key. So his tutor's been working really hard and growing that relationship with him. And this little one, who, as I say, hadn't really been to school for 2 years, he's now attending English and maths lessons, even though Y11's finished. And he's agreed to go on a lifeguard course. Now, for me, that's that little moment that might change that child's life, and that's because of a teacher. That's because somebody, you know, has got in there and got a relationship with him and made him see that there might be a different way, there might be a different choice for him to make at the moment. I just thought I'd put that one in because as soon as when I was listening to Kat, I thought about him. And it is all down to relationships. Thanks, Hayden. So looked after attendance, North Yorkshire is not performing as well as some authorities. The percentage of children in care with a fixed term exclusion in North Yorkshire as well is 9.6. We haven't had any permanent exclusions since 2011, which is a good record, but I'll be honest with you, that doesn't always mean that the children have the highest quality education. There are some cases where a child would have been permanently excluded, but other things have been put in place to kind of prevent that permanent exclusion. So it's not quite the rosy picture that zero presents. But you can see there, sorry, I haven't got my reading glasses, that, you know, we're not doing quite as well as the national average on attendance for looked after children. Next slide, please, Hayden. And this is this is overall absence percentage for child in need and child protection. So you can see there where the gaps are, and we've got in red the gaps that we're concerned about. Now, they're quite old figures, obviously, because we haven't got recent attendance due to COVID. But basically, more children in North Yorkshire are absent than the national average for child in need and child protection. Thanks, Hayden. Next slide, please. And this is the percentage of learners classed as persistent absentee who are SIN and CP. So these are our children who are on less than 90%. And again, we've just highlighted the gap there with national, so that you can see, you know, why we're concerned around our child in need and child protection, and particularly there our child protection, where the gap is quite large. So there's more children in North Yorkshire have been persistently absent than the national average again. So again, we understand that you all know your attendance rates very well in your own schools, but it's really useful, I think, sometimes to look at the disadvantaged learners across the county as a whole. Thanks, Hayden. So absence and persistent absence rate has broadly increased in line with national, although our SIN absence has increased, likely linked to COVID. And child protection, the absence and persistent absence has been higher, consistently higher than the national average. So our child protection are not doing, you know, as well. There's similar trends with suspensions, but the suspensions is consistent for child protection is consistently higher than the national average. Thanks, Hayden. Beyond children's social care, so the figures for children's social care open to SIN and CP I gave you in those charts, but actually these are children not open to social care. So on persistent absence, over the course of this academic year, 13,316 pupils have passed the threshold for persistent absence. So we have over 13,000 children who are below 90% attendance. And we have 1,048 pupils who've hit the threshold for severely absent. So that's attending less than 50%. So again, that's worrying. We all need to work on this because, as I said at the beginning, that means that they're missing, you know, in some cases, a year of their learning. Thanks, Hayden. I'm not going to go through this an awful lot other than to say that obviously for children in care and any child with a social worker, it really has to be the last option for suspending. I'll answer that later. Is that available as a percentage? I probably can get that to you. There are more figures. I didn't want to completely offload everyone, but I can send some more figures round on attendance. Thanks, Hayden. So percentage of learners with one or more suspensions, and again we've put this into child in need and child protection again, and highlighted the gap and put in red the figures that we're worried about. So again, more children in North Yorkshire have been suspended than the national average for SIN and CP, with the gap even more for child protection. So again, we're worried about our disadvantaged learners here, particularly child protection. Thanks, Hayden. So I think one of the questions was around what support the local authority can give around the increased emphasis that we're all going to be giving for attendance. And yes, there will be more support coming because we've had our guidance document for working together to improve school attendance. This applies, all the guidance applies from September, so we have to be working towards that really robustly. And it's due to become statutory in September 2023. So all local authorities will need transition time to meet these expectations, but we should be trying as far as possible to make the changes, as soon as we can. And a school attendance support team should be available to all schools free of charge by no later than September 2023. One sec. So all local authorities are expected to have a school attendance support team that works with all schools in its area. Doesn't matter what type, academies, maintained, independent, it's around attendance. There's no requirement for a specific service delivery or name, but each local authority is expected to deliver the 4 core functions free of charge to all schools. Next slide, please. So the 4 core functions that will be delivered by a local authority attendance support team are communication and advice, targeted support meetings, and multidisciplinary support for pupils, as well as legal intervention. So for the past few years, and some of us have been around a long time, and some of us used to work in local authorities where we had education, social attendance teams and welfare officers. Won't say about the loop coming all the way on the circle coming around again, but we have as a local authority only been really working on that legal intervention because a lot of that funding did go out to schools. But this is a new requirement now. So next slide, please. So we've had a meeting already with secondary school head teachers asking for their advice and consultation on what would constitute good school attendance. We really want to hear from you. So after today, if you've got ideas on what you think a school attendance team should look like, please let us know. Louise Wilson and myself held that consultation with head teachers, and we'll be working with Sarah Fawcett in inclusion, who will be responsible for the school attendance support teams. So the school attendance support team will have a named contact for each school to support with queries and advice. They'll hold termly conversations with each school to identify, discuss, signpost and provide access to services for all of your children who are persistently absent or at risk of becoming so. They'll use schools' attendance data to identify pupils and cohorts at risk of poor attendance and agree targeted actions and access to services for these pupils, and provide schools with an opportunity to shape, aim and prioritise for improvement. So local authorities should agree the frequency this must be shared, and it should be no less than once per calendar month. So essentially, schools are going to get data on attendance monthly from the local authority so that we're not leaving things. Provide schools of all types with a geographical area with opportunities to share effective practice. So that'll be coming up with local networks. Have you got any local issues around attendance? Are there any transport issues? Are there any contextual issues? And work together to share good practice in your areas. And regularly bring schools together to communicate messages and provide advice. So basically that means there's going to be at least a network meeting once a term. You're going to get a termly meeting to look at your own data for each school once a term, and monthly you'll be getting data sharing about attendance from the attendance support team. Thanks, Hayden. So thanks for listening today. You'll know that virtual school, our kind of almost our grassroots approach is through attachment and trauma aware schools. So I just thought I'd let you know when our next meeting is. I can see there's quite a few hands up as well as questions. So am I okay, Hayden, to take some hands up? Well, I just will.
Yes,
So
certainly.
Rebecca.
Hiya, Julie. Hiya,
Hi,
Julie.
Rebecca. Lovely to hear from you.
What a warrior coming on with COVID. I mean, I need to just preface what I'm about to say with, I work across 4 local authorities. I'm head of safeguarding from Matt, as Julie knows. And for me, Julie is in a league of her own when I work across 4 of the local authorities. And it's not a Julie Budd Appreciation Society, but you're very lucky in North Yorkshire with the service that you get from Julie. And that comes from a place of experience working with 3 other LAs as well. However, I'm hearing all of this, and a bit like you've said, Julie, and you didn't want to say it, so I will say it. It absolutely is coming back full circle to the SW service and the parent support advisors that we had not many years ago. I suppose my main takeaway from today is that we've heard a lot of really valuable information, and maybe for those local authority schools that kind of need to know a little bit more about the how, rather the why, that's fantastic, but we kind of need the how, I think. And for me, we do a lot of this data analysis, we do a lot of the monitoring, we've got really tight procedures in place. What we're lacking is the intervention. So I think it's really important that somehow, if there's a way of feeding back to other senior partners and colleagues today, and Hayden knows this is my soapbox project, but it's for DSLs to have an equal voice around the table when they're in strategy meetings, when they're in RCPCs, ICPCs, because I know that competent DSLs really advocate for attendance for those vulnerable learners to feature as part of chin plans, CP plans, LAC reviews, etc., etc. But it doesn't actually seem to then carry any kind of weight, or there be any kind of real direct movement that we're all on to follow that up other than school. So I get my DSLs calling me regularly because we've got children who are just not in, and we're doing doorstep visits and we're doing intervention and we're putting parenting programs on. As an academy trust, we're providing all of that, but we do need a little bit more of that partnership working. And then therefore, when we give feedback and we say it's not working, you know, they're not engaging with us, that it means something and it makes a difference. And if anything, to be honest with you, what we need as DSLs is we kind of need it to make a difference further down the pipeline. So before we're in a situation where we're at a chin or a CP level, that early piece, so these children don't become in this system, when DSLs are referring and they're reaching out and they're saying listen to us, that we are listened to. And I think if that can be fed back a bit wider, I know my local authority currently working with Jess Markham on a program with MAST at the moment, where we're getting involved with group screening, and we're trying to have more of a direct involvement when we make referrals. We get listened to because we do have the knowledge, and you're right, everything that you said that's so inspiring about the difference teachers make to these children's outcomes. That's why, to be honest with you, there needs to be more of a level playing field. As we move forward, DSLs do now hold a lot of responsibility, and it's not just, you know, somebody who also has 7,000 other responsibilities in the school. It's very senior leaders in our schools who hold these responsibilities. End of soapbox.
No, it's, and you know that I'm with you on that, Rebecca. And I think although the answer can't be virtual school, like you say, doing everything, because we can't possibly, even with the resources that we have been given, what we are doing is looking to improve the recording of actions from children's social care around education, around attendance. I have lobbied for more panels where we all come together, and like you've just said, the work. So I'm interested to do more. It's the start of a journey on this. I hate that when people say that, but there you go. It's the start of a journey. But Amy's going to come in now and talk a little bit more about the SID and CP and the not in 25 meetings that we've been having. But again, we know that they're not in 25 meetings that we've been having, in a way that needs to be wider, or it needs to be included in meetings that are already happening, and as early as we can, like you say, at that master referral point would probably be the best, Rebecca.
It's really important. I think it's, sorry, just to steal the show a little bit longer, but actually it's a really key message that all of this is now coming through, and ultimately it does land on the school's doorstep and the DSL, and our DSLs are spending hours per week chasing social workers, and it's not because they're sat twiddling the thumbs. Of course they're not. They're at the hard end, and we get that, but I think probably for North Yorkshire to move to a linked social worker model somewhere down the line, so our DSLs have got a port of call that they can go to get that joined up working and that information sharing.
Well, and maybe at our next network week we can discuss that, absolutely, and possibly get children's social care, maybe our Jess, to discuss that further. I've got another question, which was, does North Yorkshire fine parents if they continue to take holiday during? Yes, we do, but I don't think we would be called a huge finer. I know that some of the local authorities do fine. I was speaking to Suffolk, who have I hate the word zero tolerance, but anyway, they have a kind of zero tolerance to school holidays, and that has in the past funded education social welfare workers, and they've had 28 workers in Suffolk because they will fine anybody who takes their child out during school holiday. Thank you. Oh, Helen, that's lovely. It is very important, but like I say, initial discussion, and we'll move on. But I'll let Amy move on now to tell you how we are working on exactly that, Rebecca.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Hayden.
Thanks, Hayden. Just the next slide, please. So yeah, just to pick up on what Rebecca was saying, really, we totally understand that you need a protocol, because we find it equally difficult getting hold of social workers because they're out doing what they need to be doing. So just before we start, every school has been allocated one of our virtual school education liaison advisors. So you will have somebody who you'll be able to contact when you need something, some support, somebody you need to get hold of a social worker or find out who they are. So we can be that as much as we can for you. And if you do need to know who they are, because we have the whole team have made contact with schools and hopefully you as the DSL. But if you can't remember who they are or you can't find the last email, please just let me know. I'll put my email in the chat after, and that's really one of the things we realised that you needed would be a good contact for you to reach out to. So if you're also the designated teacher, or even if you're not, it will be the same virtual school contact as for looked after children who'll be dealing with the school. So just a bit joined up working for you, make it easier. So obviously, if you might be doing the same role, you might be having both. Like Rebecca said, often you end up with 3 or 4 or 7 responsibilities on your shoulders. So actually, just on that note, I'm just going to say thanks so much for joining us and supporting on the front line, you know, the vulnerable young children through to the end of this year. We know it's not easy. Julie and I have done that job, and we come from a place knowing that you do try as hard as you can, and that's why we're really open to having feedback on how else we can support you. So just before, as we continue this slides, if you just go into the next one, we'll tell you a bit about what this is some research, and from the actual research and practice that's going on, and also from other DSLs that we've talked to. I don't think Dr. Williams is on the call today, but she's been a great help at one of our outstanding schools, helping pass some information about what really works well. And I've seen this in practice working well with these young people. So some tips that you could use, you probably already do it, so please excuse me if I'm telling you already things you already know. So we've talked, it's really about a culture. That's one thing that we've heard a lot of schools say. It's the culture, it's knowing your children and being proactive and providing that key person. So there in the blue column you can see someone who gets to know them really well, someone, and this is for all vulnerable children, so not necessarily on NYSCP plans, but everybody that has someone allocated to them, a carefully considered member of staff that knows the child well or can develop those relationships, trusting relationships intensively at first, to really to make that young person feel safe and secure at school, and to make them want to attend, to know that they belong somewhere, which is the massive part of it. If they can feel like school is the stable place, which it is in their lives, and that's one of the huge things we've been trying to get across to children, social care and social workers, putting it in with their care planning about education, is them understanding the huge impact that you have on those children, and the big place in their hearts that you have, that you see them, you're like a parent to them during the day, and probably when they go home, or if you're like Julie and I used to be, it's you don't stop thinking about them, and I don't with the children that I work on their cases now. So just touching on one of the other things there is about, you probably know, you have to help scaffold their relationships, because often these young people don't have those social skills. They weren't taught when they were very young at all the toddler groups they can go to. They didn't have a chance to socialise. They weren't brought into conversations with adults. That's where they need that. Also, talking to teachers, so the key person, and obviously use a DSL, feeding to those teachers what they need to know. And I know there's also obvious worries that people have about sharing information that might be delicate, but I think what I would say was, obviously you have to act with what the child would like you to talk about and disclose, but I think it's so important that teachers know what generally about what's happened to a young person, because the behaviour that they see in the classroom will be from that. It'll be from those ACEs that they've experienced or that they're going through at the time. It might be all they can do to get to school, let alone be with the right pair of shoes or shirt, as you'll know. And it's sometimes for them is seeing that you understand that. And often you do. It's just, and I know time is really difficult to find, but if you find, it doesn't have to be you that is this key person. It could be someone in the pastoral team, perhaps someone that the young person knows. It doesn't have to be very long. It can be a micro moment, like Julie said, a smile, a thumbs up, something in the corridor or something, just to let them know you know they're there and for them. And one of the huge things is having a place to retreat to, a safe space. So the key allocated person, the safe space, are what were originally known as the safe base and the secure base. So, and that really will help contain the young person. Often we know schools give them tickets and passes that they can go to safely to these areas if things get a bit too much for them, to avoid any escalation when they see that any triggers happening. So the last column there about the barriers to learning and progress. So as we find out, SEMH, social emotional mental health, really underpins everything. But if it's to look for any academic or cognitive difficulties they might be having, that might create a behaviour, perhaps got huge gaps in learning. And as Julie said, the statistics about that, and you can imagine how much they've actually missed, that they're getting really frustrated because in their minds they are more able than they've been allowed to be. Also involving them in school life, the wider school life. They just think about going home. They don't realise there's all these other friendships they can make and connections and skills they can learn in a non-pressurised environment outside of the curriculum. Also about adjustments in the classroom. Is there things you can do? There might be seating, anything that just might make it just a quick smile as they walk in the classroom, a bit of time at the end, they need something, just that connection that will stop them with those behaviours like the shouting out, because that's all that they really want the teachers' attention. They need that reassurance from an adult in their life that they're on track. So we We provide ACEs training, but there are others out there, the adverse childhood experiences, and to show what they've been through, and the massive effect it can have on their physical well-being as well, their actual health. Later on in life, percentages are quite scary about what the impact can have on their actual bodies as they grow up. Some schools find it useful to have pupil information sheets to hand out to the staff, a bit like you might have if you've got sort of children who need EpiPens on in the staff room. But it just helps teachers know, get a bit of a background about each young person that they need to be looking out for, and keep reminding themselves about, I think, because it's so easy to think that they're just coping fine, and actually they might not be engaging as well as they need to be. And that, with the close monitoring, fits really well. Keep an eye on it, keep checking in with the teachers from how are things going, and it is that minimising things before they start to get difficult. Just as Rebecca mentioned earlier, need to nip it in the bud with those vulnerable children. And also, obviously, last on the list, but definitely one of the most important, is student voice, how they're feeling, what they feel could make a difference. Having that almost like an adult conversation with them about, things aren't going quite so well, what's going wrong, but we can, I'm sure lots of you do this already, so I won't stay any longer on that one. So if you could just go to the next slide, please. Thank you. So, talking about social, emotional, mental health, we are trying to promote school as a stable, protective factor with a key person, and that is to build that attachment. And lots of people might have heard of attachment, but you might not know that 40% of today's population, including 40% of people in this meeting, could experience an insecure attachment in infancy, and that's a huge percentage when you think of a class. Almost half of it, of the children not having secure attachment to an adult in their life ever, for various reasons, not necessarily because of a specific abuse, but it just sort of, I think it just raises your awareness to it, really, because attachment, your relationship with the children can really help build that. It helps them heal, it helps them feel safe and contained, it helps them emotionally regulate and engage with their learning and peers. It prevents them from coming into care sometimes, and it can return them to their safer families as well. And it really does physiologically help heal the children of their early adverse experiences. And if they can't feel safe in the classroom, they really can't explore their learning. And it's such a waste, and for them, and it's so much more difficult for them to engage and learn, and as you can imagine, it just accumulates for them. So could you go to the next slide, please? So what have we done so far? So that bit was a bit about what you might be able to do implementing your skill, but this is about what we're doing. So could I have the next slide, please? And this was a bit about connecting. We know that you work really hard. We talk to, we've got our education liaison advisors who will go out to the individual schools and talk with yourselves, or around a key person in your school that deals with young people. But we wanted to make sure that things that were coming through from the other side, we would really like these meetings to be everybody involved, but it's just so difficult to, like Julie said, we're currently re-evaluating it to find out where this would best fit in, where these meetings would best sit and who to attend, because there does seem throughout this project, we've realised there are lots of different meetings that talk about the same young people, and it's about getting the right people around the table at the right time to make the difference. So the locality meetings, so these not in 25 hours meetings are, we discuss all the children that are not in 25 hours of education that are brought up through social workers supervision, so they escalate it to their managers and it comes to us. And obviously we are concerned we will miss children in this, but that's why we have allocated you with ELA, as they're called, just at the bottom bullet point there. So we facilitate the multi-agency meetings, make sure that if they're not attending their 25 hours, that they have that provision to start with, but that we work in a psychologically informed, solution-focused way to identify exactly what the barriers are and to remove them, and who it is that we need to work with and who's involved as well already. We RAG rate each month just to the cases of how they're developing and to highlight which ones we really need to focus on, because obviously our resources are limited, and whether we need to escalate the cases further to other senior leaders. So the research suggests that with recommended approaches that we've been implementing, it can improve attendance, and well-being and attainment will improve from there, and obviously for outcomes in life as well. So these meetings are chaired by the individual group managers. Now there's only 3 actual group managers from the FAST team, which is the family assessment support and safeguarding teams. So that just shows you how high up there and how seriously we are all taking it in children's social care, that they're giving their time to make sure that this is such that education is on their agenda really high up now. And we also invite our youth justice colleagues and the representations from inclusion and elective home education teams. So next slide, please. I'm just going to tell you a bit about. So you can see on the map the young people and the spread of the children we've been discussing and trying to support back into education on the map. And so you can see the different localities that we have of these meetings on a monthly basis, one for each one. You will be getting slides, so you can have a little look later if you want to. So next slide, please. You can see the RAG ratings on the next one coming up about, so obviously each child that comes onto the agendas will start off as red, and you can see how we've progressed a lot of them to amber and green, and obviously new ones come in all the time to increase that red back up. So it's just we just keep working on it really, and we'll just tell you a bit about how we do that, because we've got a couple of case studies to showcase that further down. So if we could just skip down, I won't talk much about the next slide. We could just go on to the one after that, which has the case studies on. So this is maybe an example of how we might have done this, in how we have done it. This is one of our live cases at the moment. So for example, this was a year 9, and it does seem quite a difficult year, that, for young people. We're struggling to engage with even his social worker, wasn't really attending school because of his poor sleep hygiene, being that really he was out with his friends at night and wasn't getting in and having sleep. So he was obviously at risk of child criminal exploitation for things he was doing while he was out, and he was becoming violent towards his mother. And despite the multiple attempts by school to re-engage this young person, like Rebecca was saying, it was just nothing was making a difference, and it was hindered by his recent diagnosis of ASD. So it did highlight to us, thank you, with the school disco, we'll have a good dance, won't you? How we went about that, the virtual schools, or the allocated ELA, worked with the DSL in the school and the social worker together and met with the young person and created a support plan. And that included principal teachers, which is up in Colburn, and their Thrive Hub. And a reintegration began, as the young person did actually want to be back in school, but from peer pressure and various things, he was just not getting there and didn't really know how to get back to school. I think that's the problem. Once they drop out, they don't really know, they get a bit overwhelmed about how they get back in. But fortunately now, after all the work that's being done around him, he is now attending on a phased return timetable and will hopefully be back in school by now. So that's one of the good stories we've had so far. And the next case study, please, Aidan. So this is a bit younger, year 7, who moved in from out of county and was not attending school. His mum didn't want him to go. He was electively home educated. although the provision for that we were quite concerned about. So the young person's mum was struggling with her own mental health, possibly related to PTSD from her military experiences and that she'd had. So this time it was the elective home education advisor who attends the meeting who came and actually built that connection with mum, began working with her and slowly building that trust that somebody that she could rely on, because obviously she'd moved from out of county, didn't have any friends in the area. It was can't be underestimated the impact that had, really. And mum was informed of the support she could get from Catterick Garrison, and the early help advisor built those bridges and relationship and started promoting school as the best place for the child, and encouraged, together with social worker, they managed to get her to apply for a school place, and that young person is now full-time in school. So just a little insight into how we've worked through these meetings in the background, and you might not have been aware of those if it was your school, and you might not know that these things are going on, but we are sort of fighting that cause in the background. So if you just skip down to see the next slide, please, see what else we've done. Obviously, we've got about a minute left, so I won't spend long on it. Obviously got the locality events Julie mentioned, the training that we've been delivering such as this. We've got regular cohort discussions with yourselves, with our education liaison advisors, and if you've been haven't managed to spend time with the ELAs from my team, please feel free to ask me if you don't remember who they are, or because they really are a good source of support for you, and to get contact with social workers to help with home. Although we can't do any of that direct work, we can help advise of what might work and really just get everything moving when you're really stuck in that position, feeling like you're the one that that it's weighing on your shoulders, because you're not. We want you to make sure you don't feel alone in this. So the initial evidence is that sort of we're spreading this as a common understanding in social care, and we've seen it in their care planning now. The education of place of safety, they're recognising that it's not that we want to wait till the child is settled at home before they become to school. It's literally get them to the provision, because that is a massive strength and a massive factor in their life, because you are so important to them. And obviously we've worked on strengthening partnerships within children's social care and with the schools, because the aim of the project really was to set things up so that we could, if it doesn't carry on, that practices can continue. So that's really what we're going to strive to carry on doing, really. The next page, you can see this flowchart of support, which I'm not going to spend too much time on, but one of the things we're going to work on is having some drop-in sessions. If that would be useful to you, please put that in the chat, so that you could just come and with us at any time on a Tuesday afternoon, for example, and just drop in and say, oh, who's a social worker with this child? Have they got one? Really need some help with this, or this child's, I don't know what to do, help. So yep, they'll be there for those. And just flicking on to probably one of the other important things is the next slide of the early help consultants, who can support you complete an early help assessment, but also for advice. So they're the contacts for you that you can take away. But please do, we are open to advice for this. What do you think would really help you? We really would like to know, because obviously it has to be of benefit to you. And if you don't feel that there's not enough happening, if you have good ideas, you want to be involved in setting something up, you want to be involved in a working group, please contact me, because we want to know how things will work better for you to support you in schools. And that's all from me. So I wish you a happy holiday when you get there, or unless you're already there. Take care. I'll hand back to Hayden.
Thank you very much for that. I think everybody will agree we've had some really great presentations this week for this session. One of the things that we want to know as a partnership, and for everybody here, is what, how this can be improved. We would like to know, what are your top 3 safeguarding concerns? What do you feel is going well in relation to safeguarding in your school, and what would you like to get out of these webinars? Unfortunately, we've run out of time today. It would be quite nice to have had a discussion about that, but if you do have any ideas, and if you could answer those questions just by popping the answers in either the chat or emailing me. I'll put my email address in the chat, or you can just send it to nySCP@northyorks.gov.uk. It would be really good to get that sort of feedback so that we can develop these sessions in the future. There will be a session for new DSLs, but we'll be just circulating that as a video. We'll be recording that next week because unfortunately we just don't have times today. So thank you all very much, and thank you to everybody who's done 2 sessions today. Your presentations have been fantastic, and we hope that all schools have a fantastic summer holiday, and we hope to see you at the DSL conference in Harrogate in October. Thank you.